Hey, what's up guys? It's Vel here and I am back to bring you guys my Trans Tornado of Elemental Turbulence guide for the upcoming 3.25 Settlers of Kalguur League. So this skill came out last league and I absolutely loved it. I ended up, saying let's league start this, and it went really smooth. I got my watchstones within like the first day and very little gear, and I haven't even begun to peak. Trans Tornado is a funny skill because it's 100% spell fizz that's converted into randomly either cold, fire, or lightning, and you can only have 3 tornadoes out at a time, and they last about 4 seconds each, but they slap. Let me get into the pros and cons. Big pro, it aims for you and it rips through enemies. It's also league startable, as I proved last league, and it has very easy gear progression. I would say some of the cons are that the tornado doesn't always pick the target that you want, so it can make bosses with multiple ads kind of annoying. You have to get the skill in lab, so you're gonna have to farm it or buy it, and you can only have 3 tornadoes out at a time. Let's talk about the offense and defense. For offense, its best scaling is going to be gem levels. Now, that falls off at around level 30, but still until 30, gem levels aces. Spell crit until you hit 100%. Crit multi would probably be your next bet. More multi, better. Fizz's extra is a great one to have. Any of the 3 elements are good on it. It's really good damage-wise. Spell damage is a no-brainer. It's a spell. And cast speed, I put this one lower on the list because you definitely want cast speed, but only to a point. As long as you can keep tossing out 3 tornadoes comfortably, you don't have to get max cast speed. You can also scale with AoE, generic global fizz, or any generic elemental. You don't want to scale with a specific element, you don't want to go for % lightning, for example, since it will only apply to your lightning tornado, but you can still use flat elemental damage to spells, that still works. Now for some of our defenses. Right off the bat, we are Petrified Blood users, so this turns part of all incoming hits into damage over time, while using Glorious Vanity with the Corrupted Soul Keystone to soak damage between our life and ES pools at the same time. We have big regen and leech, not only from being an Inquisitor, but various areas of life leech and ES leech. We sit with about 18k armor, so you don't feel super squishy. It's both 75 block, 75 spell block with glancing blows. And I know normally glancing blows is but we use Aegis, and Aegis gains back ES when we block, which negates a lot of the downside to glancing blows. It is almost crit immune. Currently, the PoE is sitting at 83%, and you could technically use 4 tattoos to get it there. It's entirely up to you. It is ailment immune. We use a Storm Shroud as long as we make boots or belts with Torment Essence. It's very easy to get our ailment immunity. It also is stun immune. Because we're half ES, having Energy Shield gives us 50% stun avoid, making it pretty easy to get the other 50% through Jewels and Flask. I mean, if you don't have ES, you're basically dead anyways, right? And I'm gonna throw it in there. You can be Corrupted Blood immune if you corrupt it on your Storm Shroud. But it's possible. I'm saying it's possible. Now I'm going to go over some key points of the Endgame Tree. Great thing about this build is not only are we the glorious Long Neck Templar, but it has so many things in the starting area that we just love. It's got life, regen, resist, generic elemental damage, block for later, and one thing I did want to mention is actually this node right here, Magmatic Strikes. 4 seconds of every 10 seconds, we get really fat damage, and that's really nice to have. You know, only 6 seconds of not fat damage. That's fine, I'll take that. But what's really great is this Fire Mastery in here, because this Fire Mastery makes it so the more fire res you stack, the more regen you'll get. And this build loves regen. We can't get enough regen. I wish I could, but I can't. So yeah, this is a really nice node to have. Now on to the Glorious Vanity. So a very important thing to know about the Glorious Vanity is it needs to have the name Doriani on it. If you don't have Doriani, you will not get the Corrupted Soul Keystone. His name is associated with the Keystone, so that's what you want. This Corrupted Soul Keystone is really, really big defensively for us, so it's pretty much what we want to go for right away on our Glorious Vanity. And later for the end game, you will want, see the Soul Worship. You want this for the Spell Leech as energy shields. And there's Thaumaturgical Protection for the chance to block spell damage. Plus the defenses from Equip Shield is really nice too. It's quite nice. The small nodes on it don't matter. There's a lot of good ones you can get and does touch a lot of small nodes. This Energy Shield Mastery is actually big. So once you get the jewel, you will definitely want this mastery, even if the notable in here isn't very good for you. Oh, this Shield Mastery is also pretty big. We switch to a shield when we get a 5-link on, so having just some crit multi per ES is real handy. Really quickly about the clusters, Doriani's Lesson is the most important thing to get on this cluster. The other two don't matter. Ideally, Sadist is the best, but it's kind of expensive, so it could be your last call. You can get anything else in there in the meantime. And the small cluster, you ideally want to go for Righteous Path for the effect of Consecrated Ground. All right, now let's talk about the Ascendancies. Right away, I like to go for Righteous Providence. We get to scale crit really early with attributes, so it feels really good when leveling because all points into int or strength feel like, you know, a little teeny bit of maybe damage. Next, I personally go for Sanctuary. Now, this is mainly setting you up for your Merciless Lab choice. It gives you Conk Ground when you stand still, and that gives you bonus damage when you're standing on Consecrated Ground. However, when you get off that Conk Ground, that damage stops. But if you use something like a Holy Flame Totem while leveling or a Sulfur Flask, you can have that Conk Ground pretty much the entire time to stand on for big regen and damage. When I was leveling this, I found it better to take Pious Path as my third ascendancy for Merciless Lab. This allows your Conk Ground to linger for 4 seconds, and it gives big regen. If you're playing softcore, you can always go the danger route and take Inevitable Judgment first and just, you know, live a little on the edge until you get Uber Lab Pious Path. But personally, I did Pious, and then last but not least, Inevitable Judgment. It is pretty much a no-brainer. It's massive damage. You don't have to worry about Elemental Penetrate. You don't have to worry about needing to expose. It works really nicely, in particular with this skill, because we use all 3 elements. Lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the gearing. For this build, I love Wand and Shields, so that's what I went with. Ideally, Cast Speed Wand is the way to go. Now, this particular wand I did make in Necropolis League, but in no way does it actually need all of these stats to be a decent build. I got all 4 Watchstones on 2 wands that were both from maybe yellow maps at best. Maybe. One of them didn't have a +1. One of them only had like 30 spell damage. It was a mess, but I mean, it got me there, right? So who cares? Either way, I left this wand in as an example of things that you want. As I said earlier, gems number 1. Nice thing on a wand here is with this skill, you can use +1 cold, +1 fizz, +1 fire, or +1 lightning. It makes your search like a lot easier. a lot easier. So you have all of that open. The only one that's not open is Chaos, right? Cast speed, you don't need that much cast speed. It's really like, can I get out 3 tornadoes? Does it feel good? You can stop there. Spell crit only until you're at cap crit. Crit multi is like the best. And really, you can have an open suffix or prefix for whatever you want. Like this is just what happened to craft for me in the graveyard. And I said, I'll take it. It's not necessary. It's just like, it's nice, you know, it's just nice. On to the Aegis. It's pretty big for us. It's armor ES, which we use, but it's also max cold. It's got res. It's got good block. And the biggest thing is because we gain ES on block, it negates a large part of the downside of glancing blows. I wanted to mention Crown of the Inward Eye. It's a great helmet, but the reason I wanted to mention it is because later on you ideally do want that socketed skills, get a 90% cost and reservation multiplier. Really, that corrupt on it is nice to have since it saves you from having a level 4 Enlighten. The chess piece. So this has been a little bit contentious between me and some others who have been looking at the builds. I went with the Glass Cannon route and went with the Dialas. I'm softcore, so I can, right? My Dialas, I went with 4 green, 2 red, since green sockets give you 30 quality, and that's nice on a lot of supports. And the 2 red is for +2 level, which I use for Empower and Woke added fire damage. Now, some may argue, Vel, why aren't you using red socket for Tornado? It's 12% damage. You're crazy. But I gotta tell you, there's a lot of quality of life in the speed of Tornado. So, I mean, 12% damage is good, but quality of life on fast tornadoes, it's really up to you. You wanna go 3 red, 3 green, 4 green, 2 red, it doesn't matter. And here's where the chess piece is contentious because you can also use a Skin of the Loyal or Skin of the Lords. It is definitely more defensive, for sure. You're still gonna get +2s. The Skin of the Loyal you can always get as a corrupt target as well, which is really nice. Skin of the Lords, you can try to go for some miscellaneous keystone that sounds good, like Iron Quill or something, but it does, like you can get a dead keystone, doesn't matter. But generally, the chess piece is a very flexible spot. You can even, I don't know, put a rare in there if you want. All this gear in the PoE I made with a lot of it essences and a couple pieces were graveyard, but not many. These boots, for example, I just did a quick essence craft on them to get my Avoid Shock. You can also get your Avoid Shock on belts. You just need to use Torment Essences on either your boots or belts to get some Avoid Shock for your Storm Shroud. For the Abyss Jewel in the Stygian, I personally went for the rest of my Avoid Shock, some more Avoid Stun, and some life if I can get it. But really those 2 avoids are pretty big, and you ideally would like to get them on your jewel. The amulet is super flexible. So you can use Ashes, you can use a +1 with a spell block essence. There's a good amount of choice in this slot. I went for a Citrine amulet because I kind of really, I wanted that dexterity, and strength is great. So I went for one of those. I ended up getting it fractured with T1 multi, and I just slammed it with essence to get spell block. And I literally the first essence I used, it was good enough. Call it a day. When it comes to the rings, I want personally both of these Herald of Purity mods, both the buff effect and the physical damage while affected by Herald of Purity. And for the implicits, I liked having the reduced mana, but they did buff inspiration, so it's not that huge. Really, just having more attributes is great, and whatever you want as a second is up to you. For the other ring, I crafted this myself. I went for Amethyst ring because I need that chaos res, and I just used Dexterity Essence, crafted it until I got what I wanted. The other gear up here is fairly straightforward, but I am going to talk about the flasks. For the life flask, this recovery, if used while low life, is really big. It is ideally what you want on your life flask. Bottled Faith is going to be your best in slot DPS flask. but if you don't have it, it's too expensive, what have you, you can just use a regular crit flask. Until then, granite, armor, we love that, yay. You know, you can always, 3 charges when you hit an enemy is ideal, and reduce curses or whatever you want. I like reduce curse, so I put it there. I know you guys saw this progen and you're like, what the hells is this? Progen is not necessary. It was something I threw in at the end because I had it and it was really nice. But in the meantime, you can just use a regular amethyst flask. That works totally fine. If you got the money for a progen, then by all means, get that progen in there. The last flask is ideally your ruby flask. We use RF later, so it's nice for that. And again, with that regen mastery I mentioned earlier, it's good for that as well. When it comes to the flesh flame, Conviction of Power is going to be like the thing to go to. It gives you 4 power charges, 4 endurance charges, big, nice. It's really nice. However, it is pretty expensive, and considering the changes that they did to endurance charges, it might be a little out of budget for a while. So in the meantime, you can always get the Flesh Flame Arcane Blessing, which is like a 20% damage increase, and use a small cluster for Enduring Composure to get your endurance charges. Or if you want, you can do 2 rare jewels and potentially get max res and some other offense from that as well. It's really up to you. Last league, I went with Arcane Blessing. It was really good, and I didn't end up getting Conviction Power until way late. And that it was Arcane Blessing was totally fine as something in the meantime. I did mention the clusters before when I was going over the tree, but just to reiterate, for the large cluster, we definitely want Doriani's Lesson. It is our way of getting Life Leech, which is really annoying to do as a caster, surprisingly. It's kind of hard to get, but this is a good way to get it. Everything else on here can come after. And when it comes to the small cluster jewel, Righteous Path is the way to go because of the increased conk ground effect. The Watcher's Eye has a lot of choices. The ideal damage choice is going to be the Hatred Crit mod, but that was like very expensive. I couldn't afford that at the time. So I went with the next best damage mod, which is the Flat Hatred. The other Hatred mods aren't really worth it, to be honest. So when it comes to at least the Hatred side of things, really your best choices are the flat cold damage or the crit. Depending on how much you want to spend, you can get whatever you want, right? You can get all the Hatred mods you want and Determination. The Glorious Vanity, I already went over before, but just to state again, you definitely need it to be Doriani so you can guarantee the Corrupted Soul Keystone. And for endgame, you ideally want the 1 spell block notable and 1 spell leech notable. I absolutely love this build. I had so much fun playing it last league, and I'm like 75-80% sure I'm going to play it as my league start this league as well. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know. Consider it as your league start. I am live 6 days a week, and I hope to see y'all there.